Good afternoon. Good afternoon, producer Susan. Are we all done with our technical difficulties? Can you hear me?
Yeah, no, I got a virus, people. Be cautious out there.
All right. So you're working from your iPad instead of your laptop. All right. Well, we already probably killed 5 minutes
Yep.
of our recording time, so we may have to cut things short. So today's January 13th, second show of the new year. Here's some of the stuff we're going to try to get through. We may not get through all of it. But we actually have two quotes of the week this week. The first is from economist Thomas Sowell, who we've quoted many times. But then we have another one from Walter Williams about the rise of capitalism. And these two quotes fit together perfectly. That's why we've got two quotes, because they're like the yin and yang, and they fit together perfectly. Stupidest thing I've heard all week. We'll tell you about a bill that's making its way through the Massachusetts legislature that would try and limit how much each person in the state could drive every year. We're going to do that. In our health segment, we'll tell you about a popular new club drug that is killing people and why. You ever hear about something called pink cocaine?
I have heard about it, but
Well,
only
we'll
on
tell you we'll
TV.
tell you all about it, why it's killing people and why it isn't cocaine. All right. We'll tell you how much the stock market index has increased last year and why it was a good year if you had stocks or even if you have a 401k. Do you have a 401k?
I have a 403B, which is for nonprofits.
Okay, but it's the same thing. You got
Same
money.
thing.
Okay, all right. Last year was a good year, all right. Um, we may have to skip this story till next week. It's about how many countries and world leaders are de-emphasizing climate change as one of their top political issues and why. It's very, very interesting. We may not get to this one today, but world leaders are backpedaling away from making climate change their top priority and spending billions of taxpayer dollars on climate change. But we may have to hold that one. We have a clip from a Venezuelan national explaining why the capture and removal from Venezuela of Nicholas Maduro by the Trump administration does not constitute regime change. We'll tell you about how much gun crimes in the state of New Jersey has declined in the 3 years since the state was forced to begin issuing concealed weapon carry permits, which is exactly contrary to what both the governor and the attorney general predicted. They predicted that we were going to see a spike in gun crimes as people were allowed to carry concealed weapons. Um, there's a new one of the famous doll makers has come out with an autistic version of their famous doll and how that version differs from the regular doll that has been around for
I saw
decades. Have you heard about the autistic
I
doll?
did I saw that and I have comments on that.
All right. And our taxpayer relief shot this week comes from Slidell, Louisiana, where a homeowner shoots and kills a violent intruder at 1 o'clock in the morning. All right. I'm going to race through this since we're tight on time. Here's our two quotes, and these compliments. The first is Thomas Sowell. He said, "Socialism is a wonderful idea. It is only as a reality that has been disastrous. Among people of
Hmm.
every race, color, and creed all around the world, socialism has led to hunger in countries that used to have surplus food to export. Uh, Nevertheless, for many of those who deal primarily in ideas, socialism remains an attractive idea. In fact, a seductive idea. Its every failure is explained away as due to inadequacies of specific leaders. In other words, they just didn't do it right. But you look at every single place, Venezuela, Cuba, North Korea, it is a 100% failure rate. It may last for a decade,
Yep.
maybe 20 years, unbroken record of failure. And every time it fails, its failure is always explained away as due to the inadequacies of a particular leader. There's always an
Yep.
excuse. We just didn't have the right guy. We didn't do it right. All right. Now here's the complimentary quote. Walter Williams, another economist, by the way, another black economist, by the way, and he said, "Capitalism is relatively new in human history. You think about the history of human being, going back to, the birth of Christ. Prior to the rise of capitalism, the way people amassed great wealth was either by looting, plundering, or enslaving their fellow man. Capitalism made it possible to become wealthy by serving one's fellow man. Now, think about that. Back when you had monarchs, when you had the King of England, the only way you became wealthy was to become a king, a prince, a count, or if the king said, okay, we're going to make you the count of this region, Well, all the people, you own the land, and everybody who lived on, all the peasants who lived on your land worked for you. You own the land, you own their houses, you owned everything you produce, and they only got what you elected to let them keep. That's correct, right?
Yeah.
So again, so prior to capitalism, it was only the ruling class, and again, it was yeah, they were serfs, but serf was almost slavery
Hmm.
because the people had they were there basically eking out a survival existence. And it was only the ruling class. And then you look at like the rulers of Egypt, the pharaohs and the pharaohs, uh, people of Pharaoh's court. But again, capitalism relatively new in human history. Prior to the rise of capitalism, the way people amassed great wealth was either by looting, plundering, or enslaving their fellow man. Capitalism
Yep.
made it possible to become wealthy by serving one's fellow man. What do you think of that?
Mhm. Yeah, true.
All right.
We
And
keep seeing we keep seeing this repeating over and over. And Mondani in New York City, he thinks he's going to be different, but it's going to be the same.
it's going to be the same thing. All right. Let's move on to the stupidest thing I've heard of the week. So the Massachusetts legislature has advanced the bill for a full vote that would attempt to limit how many miles each one of their residents drive each year. It's Senate Bill 2246. Now, if passed, it would require. Now, here's a little trick they're playing. They have not specified any taxes or fees in the bill because no legislator wants to have their name saying, "Well, we passed a bill that taxed you." So what they're doing, it said, if passed, would require the Massachusetts Department of Transportation to come up with ways to reduce the number of road miles driven by residents of that state each year. Now, while the bill itself does not contain any proposed new taxes or fees, how long is it before the Massachusetts Department of Transportation proposes or implements such a fee that would be assessed every time your car went in for an emissions or safety inspection and your new odometer reading was recorded and compared to the prior odometer reading? I mean, can you just see this happening?
But so when you do go in for your yearly inspection, they do ask for your odometer reading, so they know how many miles you're driving in a
Right. Well,
year.
that's what I'm saying, and because they know, trust me, it'll as soon if this bill goes into effect, it won't be more than a year before the Massachusetts DOT, following their mandate by the legislature, says, well, one of the ways we're going to try to cut down on people's driving is by adding on a mileage fee because they're going to know what your odometer reading was last year, what your odometer reading is this year, and they're going to tack on. When you go to renew your registration right now, I don't know what you pay in your car. Is it 150 bucks, 250 bucks when you renew your.
Yeah, yeah, it's just under $100, I think, a year in Pennsylvania.
Okay, well, I guarantee in Massachusetts they're going to come up with some schedule, and the legislature is going to say, "Well, I didn't vote for that." No, you let the Massachusetts DOT impose it. You made them the bad guys because they're not elected officials. So you mark my you mark my word that if it passes, people in Massachusetts are going to start paying a mileage penalty fee if they drive more than the miles that the Massachusetts DOT thinks is right. And they're going to say, well, we have a mandate from the legislature, and this is how we're going to do it. Um, anyway, we'll have to wait and see if that passes. All right, you want to move on to our health segment about pink cocaine?
Yeah, yeah,
What
let's
do you
hear
know?
about that.
What do you know about pink cocaine, if anything?
So it's not necessarily cocaine at all. It's a mixture of drugs that is actually dyed pink, but it's often a toxic mix of like ketamine and MDMA, which is also known as Molly or ecstasy. I mean,
Exactly.
it could be a potpourri of drugs, and you really don't know what you're getting.
Right. And by initially, when it first came out, it was referred to as T2C hyphen B, 2CB. And initially, it was a psychedelic phenyl something, phenylphenethylamine, but that was very limited and hard to get. So these drug labs started just winging it. They started mixing ketamine and ecstasy and MDMA and there was no consistency, from city to city. Even within the city, no two batches were the same. And then some
Mhm.
people started mixing in fentanyl
Yeah,
uh, and Molly.
which 2 grams, literally two like grains of salt of fentanyl is enough to kill you.
Yeah, and it is killing people all around the country because they say, "Oh, yeah, I had some 2 weeks ago at this club and it was great. Got a nice buzz." And then what you get, they it's pink dye. You can dye anything
Yeah.
pink. So just because it
Yeah.
looks the same as the drug you took 2 weeks ago, it doesn't mean it's the same drug you're going to snort this week. So, uh, folks, if you have children or grandchildren that are going to clubs, please share. There's a link here from the DEA about how dangerous this stuff is and how there is zero consistency um, from even within the same city from one club to the next or one week to the next. Whatever they happen to have on hand, they throw it in diet pink, and that's what you're going to get. So it can be very, very deadly. All right. Real quick, the stock market was a great year for the stock market. You know what the S&P 500 is?
It's the top 500. Isn't it like the tech firms?
No, that's the Nasdaq. The S&P 5,
That's NASDAQ.
the S&P is our 500 largest firms in the United States, largest companies in the United States. This is the Standard and Poor's 500. It's the five, and it's regardless if they're on the Dow Jones or the Nasdaq. So the S&P without dividends, just the values of if you look at the stocks, it rose 16.4%. But a lot of those stocks paid a quarterly dividend. If you add in the dividends, so if you owned a portfolio that consisted of one share of each stock in the S&P
Hmm.
500, um, including the dividends that those stocks paid, you got a 17.88% return on your money. How does that compare
Wow.
to your local bank, which is paying what, 3.5%, 4% on a savings account?
Yeah.
And the neat thing is, by the way, is that unless you sell, now the dividends are taxable, but the dividends are only like a point and a half. The great thing is that 16.4% increase in the value of the stock, none of it's taxable. It's until you sell that stock, you don't have to pay a penny's worth of tax on that 16.4% increase in the value of the stock. And if it's in your 403B, the same thing, none of it's taxable. So now let's move over to the NASDAQ, which tends to be tech stocks. That's where you're going to find Tesla, Apple, a lot of the tech stocks. The NASDAQ grew by 20.5%, not
Wow.
including dividend payments, 20.5%. And again, unless you sell the stock, not one penny of that 20% increase is taxable. Now, let's say you're getting 4% at the bank, but that 4% is taxable. So let's say you got to pay, 20% tax. You're only netting 3.2% after tax on that money. So that's why I encourage people not to put a lot of money in a savings account, to put it in a stock fund. All right. Um,
And for those people who don't know, like a conservative stock fund would be like 5 or 6% growth. A good,
mhm.
I think, return would probably be what, like 8 or 9 or 10%.
Right.
So
But again, the S
anything over 10 to over 10 is pretty much unheard of.
well, again, and the S&P 500 is by its nature diversities because the S&P 500 includes automotive companies, includes
Mhm.
pharmaceutical companies, and includes Amazon. The S&P 500 it includes retailers like Walmart. The S&P 500 is by its very nature one of the most diverse, one of the most diverse. So, and by you can buy, you don't have to buy one share of every company. There are actually funds that are S&P funds. If you only have $200, you can buy a share of the S&P 500. Now you're only getting like one twentieth or one hundredth of each stock, but you're buying a share of the S&P 500. So you go to Vanguard.com and open an account. If you got $500, open an account and just buy a mutual fund in the S&P 500. And
Mhm.
by the way, it's predicted to do better than at least 12% this year as well. All right. How much time we got?
Oh, we got about 15, 20 minutes.
All right, we may come back to climate change, but right now I want to click over to a guy, a Venezuelan national. Yeah, the Democrats, well, Trump is trying to force quote, a regime change. He's trying to put in his handpicked people. And nothing could be further. He actually is letting it take its course. And here's this guy, he's a Venezuelan national. And he uses the word, um, he says inaccurate. He sounds like he's saying something else, but he says the claim of it sounds like something security. He's actually saying inaccuracy. Here we go.
This is a message for my American friends watching the news today in English. There is a serious inaccuracy.
He calls it inaccuracy. It's a serious inaccuracy. I'm going to play that over again.
In English. There is a serious inaccuracy in the coverage. Venezuela is not undergoing a regime change. Venezuela already has a democratically elected president, Edmundo González. He is the president. Nicolás Maduro is not the president.
By the way, Gonzalez is the guy who won the election by a 2-1 margin in 2024.
So is he now in power?
No, but Trump has permitted the vice president under Maduro to assume his role with the understanding that per the Constitution, she has to call for a national election within 60 days. So he didn't want to be heavy-handed. He said, all right, we're going to follow the Venezuelan Constitution. There's been a vacancy of the president. You're the vice president. You're going to assume the role of president. But per your own Constitution, you have to have an election in 60 days. So, and he knows that she's not going to get reelected. That's why he's not being heavy-handed. So let me continue with this guy.
He never was. He stole the last election and led a criminal organization linked to terrorism and drug trafficking, El Cartel de los Soles. And today, thanks to the vision and courage of the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, the decisive leadership of the President Donald Trump, and the actions of Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, the United States has finally recognized a fundamental truth. Protecting our hemisphere from terrorism, drug cartels, and authoritarian ideologies is a matter of national security for the United States.
Yeah. So, and again, that's a Venezuelan national saying, no, Trump has not forced the regime change. He's letting nature take its course, and he's removed a guy that had no business being there. All right. Any comments on his comment?
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this unfolds and if the Venezuelan people actually vote the other guy who was already elected, who actually won the election, if they'll vote him in.
If they elect him again, yes, absolutely. All right, let's talk about Jersey gun violence. I find this ironic. So on January 6th, outgoing governor of New Jersey, Phil Murphy, proudly took credit for a decline in gun crimes of more than 50% in the last 3 years, dropping from an average of 1,300 shootings per year to just 559 in 2025. But gee, what else happened in 2023? Well, in July of 2022, the Supreme Court issued its famous Bruin decision, requiring all states to issue concealed weapon carry permits to all applicants unless there was a disqualifying event in the applicant's background. Now, when I first applied, when I first got here, the local sheriff said, "Don't even bother. We don't give them out." Then they had the ability to simply say, "No, we don't give them out in this county." And virtually every county in New Jersey was the same. They basically said, and I think the entire state was issuing like 50 per year, 50 per month rather. Well, anyway, and after July of 2022, and then the state took them on and said, okay, you can apply, but there was like this arduous 6-month process. You had to go take a shooting test, and you had to get 4 references, and blah, blah, blah. They didn't issue the first permit to private citizens till like January 2023. Well, they went from 50 per month to 4,000 permit. I'm sorry,
Wow.
it was less than 60 per month to 4,000 permits per month. So what did Governor Murphy and his Attorney General Matthew Platkin have to say about that surge in new CCW permits? And that was early on. Here's quotes. Murphy called the Bruin decision an expansion of access to carry permits, a recipe for tragedy, shortly after the Supreme Court ruling. The Attorney General office indicated it's still concerned about possible increases in gun crimes due to the Supreme Court's 2022 ruling. And here's a quote. The ultimate impact of the Supreme Court's decision in Bruin is not yet known, since law enforcement data shows the average amount of time between the acquisition of a gun and committing a crime is several years. Well, gee, guess what? It's been more than 3 years now. And not only didn't crime go up as you tried to scare everybody, it has plummeted. There's now more than 70,000 concealed people with 70,000 concealed weapons permit in the state of New Jersey, and gun crimes have freaking plummeted. By the way, the same thing happened when, let me just go back. I'm going to go back 20 years. When I was living in Colorado, for a while, Colorado was what was called a may issue state, meaning it was up to the sheriff. He had the discretion. Yeah, he may or may not, depending how he felt that day. And there were a lot of counties, like the city and county of Denver, where they decided, no, we're not going to do it. Well, back around 1995, 96, they amended the state constitution to go from a may issue state. I'm sorry. No, it was actually they changed the state law that there was a proposal to change it from may issue state to a shall issue state, meaning unless there's a disqualifying event that the sheriffs shall issue, they have to issue. The Democrats were predicting that there were going to be shootouts at over every parking spot dispute, every four-way stop sign. You know, people were going to be, it was going to be the wild, wild west. Guess what? None of it ever happened. And Murphy and Plotkin predicted the same thing here, and nothing ever happened. So,
now, Jerzee Joe, I remember when you moved back from Colorado to New Jersey, when you were moving into your house, I was coming to visit you, and you actually had asked me to get for a tool, a cement tool. What's it called? A ram set.
right.
Which basically the blank 22 cartridge, not a real bullet. It's a modified bullet.
It's a 22 blank, yeah, for a concrete nail gun. Right. Yeah.
It's a blank. So yeah, you could probably poke somebody's eye out with it, but you're not going to kill anybody with it.
No.
Because you couldn't buy them at your local Home Depot or your local hardware store.
Yep.
I had to buy them for you in Pennsylvania and bring them across the border for you.
Yeah, for anybody who's ever used a concrete nail gun, yeah, you use a 22 concrete nail gun. It's called a ram set, and you put the 22 blank in, you hit it with a hammer, and boom, and the 22 blank, suddenly and explosively drives the nail into the concrete. Couldn't buy them in New Jersey. And
not a real bullet. It's again, you might poke somebody's eye out with it, but you're not going to be killing anybody with it.
Well, all that's gone from the now, and again, we now have 70,000 concealed carry permits, and gun crimes in New Jersey are down from 1,300 to 559. That's a 65% decline. So, but of course, the Democrats they'll always say the same thing. No, we're going to have more gun crime. No, the exact opposite happens. By the way, somebody once said an armed society is a polite society. All right. All right, let's move on to autistic. I said it was a toy company. It's Mattel. Now they've come out.
The makers who make Barbie. It's a Barbie doll.
Barbies, right? And they've done some great. They've come out with Afro-American Barbie. They've come out with Asian Barbie. They've come out.
They came out with Service Dog Barbie.
Service Dog Barbie. Well, they've come out now with Autistic Barbie. So you might ask, well, how do you tell an autistic Barbie from a regular Barbie? Do you know what the design features are?
Yeah, and I'm curious if we have any listeners who have autistic children or are autistic themselves, their opinion on this matter. But basically, this Barbie carries one of those iPads for those who are nonverbal, and it also has the headphones for people who are sound sensitive.
Right.
Now, they're saying out there that if you have met one autistic child, you have met one autistic child.
Right.
That autism is very different from human to human.
It is. There's no such thing as right. And here's some other features. The eyes don't look straight ahead. The eyes are slightly averted. They're kind of looking off to the left or looking off to the right. They're wearing sensory sensitive clothing and accessories like a fidget spinner and noise canceling headphones.
Yeah.
And here's a quote. It is important for young autistic people to see authentic, joyful representations of themselves. And that's exactly what this doll said, an executive of the company. So
it's interesting because, autism is one of those, quote, invisible disabilities. You can't necessarily tell an autistic child just from looking at them.
Right.
It's more behavioral disability. And that might not even be the right word that I just used. But for example, that Service Dog Barbie, the dog is on a flexible leash, a flexi lead. Those are absolutely positively, anybody who has a service dog will tell you they do not use those leashes.
But
Those
yeah, you
just
get.
ought to be outlawed. So clearly, somebody at Mattel is dropping the ball on their research.
All right. Yeah, so they get an B plus instead of an A. Okay. All right.
Yeah,
All right. How much time we got?
we got about 10 minutes.
All right. I'm going to play the intro to the taxpayer relief shot. This is the sheriff of Santa Barbara County, Florida. Here's why we call them taxpayer relief shots. And I'm going to turn this up a little bit. And
Was it Santa Rosa County?
Santa Rosa County. Right. Here we go.
Somebody's breaking in your house, you're more than welcome to shoot them in Santa Rosa County. We prefer that you do, actually. Hopefully, you'll save the taxpayers money.
And should we play Sheriff Grady Judd?
Sure.
You want to? Which one you like the best? Grated cheese, or you like the
I
blowback?
like the grated one, although I
Right.
think it's supposed to be Swiss cheese, but
You like grated cheese? All
Yeah.
right, let's see if I can get the grated cheese. All right. Here we go.
I would highly suggest that if a looter breaks into your home, comes into your home while you're there to steal stuff, that you take your gun and you shoot him. You shoot him so that he looks like grated cheese.
By the way, Sheriff Grady Judd now has on YouTube. It's morning briefing with Sheriff Grady Judd. It's never more than 2 minutes. They're hilarious. He starts off. He's drinking coffee out of a cup from one of the local businesses. He gives him a little plug. This morning, our coffee cup is from this pet store or this, you know, this hardware store. And then he holds up a picture of some thug that they've arrested and how stupid the thug was. So morning briefing with Sheriff Grady Judd, Judd on YouTube. You don't need any subscription. They're hilarious. So if you
he's great. Yeah.
yeah. All right, let's go to Slidell, Louisiana, which is almost as like Texas, where people own a lot of guns, right? In Slidell, Louisiana.
Mhm.
Texas, about the same thing. Here we go. Slidell, Louisiana.
Sheriff's deputies are investigating a home invasion that left one person dead and two others injured. Rob Krieger has details.
Now, this information just came into the newsroom minutes ago.
By the way, this guy's one of the worst reporters. He stops, he hesitates. He's terrible flow. So you're going to hear some pauses in here. It's not the equipment. It's this reporter doesn't know what to say next.
They say when they got to the home this morning in Slidell, they found the suspected intruder dead. This all started after 1 a.m. when a 911 received a call to 911 saying that someone had invaded a home in the 100 block of Rue de la Paix there in Slidell, where you see shortly after 1 a.m., dispatchers say that they got that call and then someone hung up.
Isn't he terrible? He's just terrible. Here we go.
After the dispatcher called back, they're able to make contact with someone at the residence. And they reported a man came into the home with a gun and got into a fight with the homeowner and another person staying there. All three people were injured during that altercation. The intruder was pronounced dead on the scene. The other two people were taken to the hospital. One was released a short time later. The other remains in the hospital and is in stable condition. The incident is still under investigation, though. Detectives, believe that the residence was targeted, and they do not believe that this was a random incident.
So 3 people got injured, but one got released from the hospital right away. The other's in stable condition. One's dead. So in this case, would you rather be the one that's in stable condition or released, or would you rather be the one that's dead?
The stable condition and released.
Yes. So in this case, the good guys came out of it, and the bad guy is bad guy wound up dead right there. All right. Anything you want to add before we sign off?
Yeah, I heard on the New Jersey news that New Jersey got a grant, a $32 million grant to buy 53 electric school buses.
Oh no.
Because they're supposed to be clean, stop the soot, stop the diesel and the coal. And I think that people, forgot, where does electricity come from? The majority of electricity come from in New Jersey. It's still coming from coal.
Yep.
And now granted, New Jersey does have a little bit mild climate. It probably gets down into the 20s, maybe some teens a couple days a year. But, we've talked so much on the show about these electric school buses and the cost, but $32 million, and they're only buying 50 school buses.
Yeah, that's $750,000 a piece.
Yeah.
$750,000 each. Wow.
Yeah. And how much is a school bus? $100,000-$200,000
Yeah,
for
$200,000 buys you a nice diesel bus. So
so
you
you
could
could easily buy
yeah,
what,
3 or 4.
150, 200 school buses with that
Yeah,
same amount of.
multiply by 3, multiply by 3.5.
Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, I heard that on the news yesterday in New Jersey.
All right. Well, we'll have to see how that plays out next winter. And by the way, when you burn coal,
But it's not just the efficiency of the batteries in these school buses. It's the the electricity itself. They're saying it's, supposed to be healthier, but again, people are forgetting where the majority of your electricity is
right.
being generated from.
Well, and not only that, New Jersey has gone from a net power exporter to a net power importer. So they're buying power from neighboring states.
And guess if they're buying power from Pennsylvania, where is the majority of Pennsylvania electric is from coal.
Yep. And by the way, since I moved here, my power has gone from 12 cents a kilowatt hour to 17 cents a kilowatt hour. My electric bills, I was getting 600 when I was running air conditioning in summer, I was getting $600 a month electric bills.
Oh, goodness.
So anyway, hey, before I don't want to run out of time. Yep. So just let me wrap up here. I want to thank everybody who listened to the podcast for giving up 30 minutes out of your busy day. We'll get to the climate change, world leaders backing away from climate change next week. Thanks for listening to me ramble on. I hope you found those topics interesting, important as I did. If you want to see some of the materials and story links you heard me talk about today, you'll be able to find them on the Jerzee Joe website at jerzeejoe.com, with Jersey being spelled J-E-R as in Robert, Z as in zebra, E-E, Jerzee. If you want to email me with a comment, question, or suggested show topic, or you'd like me to send you one of these story links directly to your inbox, just send me an email to joe@jerzeejoe.com. And just remember to spell Jersey with an R, a Z, and double E's. And with that, Producer Susan, anything you want to add before we sign off?
Yeah, I should say, learn from me. Be careful of your Chrome extensions.
Okay.
And don't get a virus.
Don't get a virus on your computer. All right. Talk to you next week. You take care. Bye-bye.